Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Adam Matthews with Matthews Counseling, and every month we post different resources around a different topic related to mental health, behavioral health, or relational health. And this March we are talking about relationships and emotional health. And one of the topics we're talking about is boundaries and how to set boundaries. It's a big buzzword, but here to talk about it is one of our fabulous interns, Kara Gooch, who is also wrote a blog post about it. So we're gonna just dive into boundaries. So Kara, first of all, welcome. This is your first one with us, so
Yeah.
excited about that. And we're talking about boundaries. So tell me a little bit about why boundaries are so important in relationship. When we're talking about relational health, particularly that emotional connection between two people, from your perspective, why are boundaries so important?
Boundaries are important in every kind of relationship, whether it's with your sister, brother, friend, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's kind of like creating your own rules to protect yourself.
Yeah,
Everybody has an idea of what might be right or wrong, but it might be
yeah,
different from the person that's sitting next to you. So boundaries are important to figure out kind of the people you want to surround yourself with, how much time you want to
yeah.
put into, let's say, being with one person or being by yourself. You kind of put
Yeah.
yourself into ways to make you feel comfortable with what's around you.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think one of the things that's why they're so important is that they help us to maintain really healthy connections with other people. And no matter what type of relationship, even in romantic relationships, committed relationships, partnerships, work relationships, like you mentioned a ton of them as well, but they're really important to help keep them healthy and keep them as stress-free as possible, which I think is really important. So, Kara, from your perspective, can you define just in real simple terms, how do you define what boundaries are? Because there's lots of definitions out there. It's kind of a big buzzword in mental health. But tell me a little bit about kind of from your perspective, how would you define it? How would you define boundaries?
Yeah, so I kind of think of boundaries as like an invisible fence or an invisible wall around yourself. And it helps you just kind of figure out how you want to be treated in a relationship, how you want to be treated um, in life in general, whether you think something is right or wrong, whether you're uncomfortable,
Yeah,
comfortable.
that's right.
Yeah, I think of them as like invisible fences or walls that kind of support you and keep you safe in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I think they really just define what our personal limits are and what our expectations are. And they're really hard sometimes to understand because there are so many different types of boundaries. And if we haven't thought through those boundaries, it can be really difficult. So maybe let's spend a little bit of time talking about the types of boundaries that we're talking about, right? When we talk about those invisible fences, right? There's different types of them. So what are some of the different types of boundaries that are really important for us to consider?
I talk about a couple of them. The first one that I talk about is physical boundaries. So this includes like your personal space, personal touch. Some people are type of people that like to hug on people, like to give you high fives, while other people don't like to be touched
No,
at all. And that is a good boundary to learn about yourself and whether you like to be touched or not.
yeah,
Personally, I have a boundary of I don't like to be hugged, don't like to be touched.
yeah,
So that's one of my
that's
boundaries.
really good.
Yeah, it's just what you're comfortable with
Yeah,
and the people around you. The next one that I talk about is emotional boundaries, and this really just protects like your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings.
yeah,
Um, you kind of this is where you kind of weave out whether someone is upsetting your feelings, if you're feeling uncomfortable with something that somebody said around you. This is where you're like, oh, maybe I don't agree with you, but this protects your own thoughts, your feelings, your
mm,
emotions. If you're starting to feel a little drained in a relationship, this is where your emotional boundaries come in a little.
yeah,
The next one I talk about is psychological boundaries. So this also kind of goes with your thoughts and feelings, but also your mental state in a relationship. It's important to know your personal beliefs and your personal values and opinions, and kind of sense of who you are as an individual. And of course, everybody has their own thoughts, beliefs, opinions, values. So it's important to know yours and have an idea of what yours are. And it's okay to know when somebody has a different belief than you or has a different opinion, and might not agree with you. But it's important to know your specific beliefs and opinions as well. Um, and then the last one I kind of talk about is your social boundaries. So this is like creating the limits where how you interact with somebody, how much time you want to spend with someone, if you're comfortable
Yeah.
doing something with somebody. It's kind of like looking at like your social clock, like whether you are wanting to go out with your friends today or
Yeah.
maybe you're feeling really overwhelmed and drained and your social boundary would be like, hey, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. So it's just
Yeah.
learning your body, what your body is telling you, and how much you can balance with your friends and your social aspect of life.
Yeah, I think that's really good because I think we don't often think about all those different aspects of boundaries,
Hmm.
and what we really need or what we really want them to be. So I love that. I think like thinking through those physical, emotional, psychological, and social boundaries can really help give us a lot of, and knowing what those limits are, what those expectations
Hmm.
are really good. So let's talk about like when we know them, how do we set them? What's some helpful tools for people to know about how to go about setting boundaries?
Yeah, I think the first important step is to know what you need. So to know if you are comfortable with going out or comfortable with what somebody is saying to you. If you're not comfortable, that's a way to like be like, hey, maybe this is not what I need right now. Maybe this relationship is not working for me. But knowing what you need also comes with communication, and communication can be very hard,
Yeah,
but it's very
yeah,
key having a good relationship with anybody and your boundaries. So if something's not working for you, if you're uncomfortable, it's important to be clear, direct, speak up, say your piece, which that is a very important piece of your boundaries is being able to be communicating to everyone around you. But also sticking to your boundaries, and stand by your boundaries, stand by what you believe in.
mhm,
Um, Going back on whether people have different views or beliefs than you. If someone doesn't agree with you and they're trying to argue with you and you're kind of wish-washy, it doesn't always end up in your favor because you're not
yeah,
staying consistent with what you want in that relationship. So it's
yeah,
really important to stick with what you believe in and communicate it when you are
yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love those things. I think the other thing that I would add too is that boundaries are not about what you're forcing other people to do, right? Or like what they are is like what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. So in that, being that self-awareness, that communication, that being consistent is like sometimes it forces you into a position where you have to kind of defend those boundaries a little bit, but the defending of them is not insisting on somebody else acting in that certain way. It's really a lot about what you're more willing to do and what this person not respecting your boundaries then kind of means that you have to do, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's difficult, but a lot of times that's difficult. But I think that you're exactly right. That knowing what you need, communicating that, being consistent with that, and then if other people fail to respect those boundaries, what you then have to make a decision about what you're going to do and what that means that you're going to do.
Yep.
What are some of the common challenges that we might see either with your clients or with yourself? Like, what are the challenges in setting boundaries that we have to kind of really kind of overcome?
A big challenge that I would say a lot is people don't always know how to communicate what they're feeling or what they are wanting because it's almost looked at as like negative. And
Mm,
I think being able to stand up for yourself is a big piece in creating those healthy boundaries. If you're not being able to communicate how you're feeling, if you're uncomfortable, if you're not liking something, it just ruins your mental state. It ruins your positive attitude, and it doesn't make a healthy relationship. So I'd say one of the main hardships is not being able to communicate with others on if you're uncomfortable versus comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a challenge I think that we all have of being able to vocalize that because it's very fearful about what the other person's going to do, right? And whether they're going to respect their boundaries. I think there's a lot of things that get in the way with just regards of us then having to, if somebody doesn't respect them, what we then have to do, like we were talking about. Like one of those things sometimes is that we may have to step away from a relationship or we may have to create distance from people that we don't want to, but if they're consistently not respecting our boundaries, then that piece, like like what I would say is like we don't have to sometimes we think of somebody the way that it gets talked about in popular culture is that if somebody doesn't respect your boundary one time, then you have to like cut them off. And that's
Hmm.
not what we're talking about. Like there's ways to kind of continue that conversation. You may have to be repetitive in repeating those boundaries, but if somebody doesn't respect your boundaries, um, in a like as a pattern, if it's a rule that is over and over again, that then you may have to kind of draw some lines, and that can be hard because, but you're prioritizing your own mental health, your own safety, what you need to be able to have a healthy and stress-free relationship. So that's great. Tara, I always ask, what's the one thing you want people to take away? If there was one thing you wanted to take away from this conversation about boundaries, what would you want them to take away?
I would take away just trying to prioritize yourself, prioritize what you need at any given moment, because sometimes we can get so involved with the people around us and what they need and
Mm,
what they want, and we give all the time, but it's important to take a step back and figure out what you need, figure out what you want, and put yourself first as the priority.
I love that. I absolutely agree. Well, Kara, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. If you have challenges with boundaries, if there is something that is hard for you to draw, we have amazing therapists that can help. You can schedule an appointment with them at matthewscounseling.net. If you need help financially, if there's a burden with being able to afford therapy, we have great therapy interns like Kara who see clients at a discounted rate. But our interns are also highly supervised and highly motivated, and our master's level graduate students who can really offer you some help at a more affordable price. You can learn more about our therapy interns at matthewscounseling.net/affordable therapy. And to learn more about Kara and some others of our great interns as well. Kara, thank you so much again for being here. And everybody, have a great day. We'll talk to you next time.